Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 12th of April, and I'm back in the Reading Nook with this quite a heavy parcel, which I'm going to unbox. I've got quite a few titles to unbox, but I'm only going to do the one today. This has been delivered by Kickstow, but I'm not quite sure what's in it. But it's very well packaged, I will tell you that now. So, get the knife. Just try not to stab me, but, because that would be a disaster. In the meantime, right, that's open. So, opening up, what we have got is okay. It's two things. So I'm gonna grab one for the moment. Of course, being from Kickstow, then it's been sent by to Chaosium. So the first thing I'm going to look at today, at least, is this. To the sound of the ice cream van is Beyond the Mountains of Madness, basically one of the first 1930 set campaigns which Chaosium has re-released almost sort of just over 20 years on. Beyond the Mountains of Madness, little by little they rise grimly into the western sky, allowing us to witness bare, bleak and blackened summits in reddish Antarctic light against the provocative background of iridescent ice dust clouds. The whole spectacle there was persistent, pervasive hint of stupendous secrecy and potential revelation. I could not help but feeling they were evil things, mountains of madness, whose farther slopes looked over some accursed ultimate abyss. So, this has been made re-available by Chaosium. It came out in 1999, and it is based upon the major novella, or basically the only novella by H.P. Lovecraft, At the Mountains of Madness, and it's an epic Antarctic campaign, a source book. Excuse me. It was designed really to basically it's designed to follow in the wake of the Starkweather Moor, or the original campaign. Sorry, the original expedition, as Lovecraft wrote about in At the Mountains of Madness. And the clever thing is that actual story is becomes the equivalent of a mythos tome within the campaign itself, so that you can actually track down former members of the expedition, those that survived and came back, and question them, and you can even get hold of At the Mountains of Madness and read it. Essentially, it's not a published story, but in the setting as such, it's more a report which the author, basically the narrator in the short story, wrote after his return. So what you've got in here, of course, first thing you've got, you open up and you have the map, and this is a map of the Antarctic. Then beyond that, we have essentially a quick guide about this printing from Mike Mason, a bit of context for why this has come back. It is it's not designed for Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, it's still for 6th edition, but really the adjustment from one to the other is relatively minor. Essentially it's easy to make the adaptation. So then we're into the campaign itself, essentially the forward explains the campaign. We have a complete list of the dramatis personae there. And really, this is probably one of the last supplements to, from Chaosium to be designed in the sort of like semi-classic style that we really grew to love and like in the 90s. The one that was used for supplement after supplement, campaign after campaign, before the change over to 6th edition, and this is really a 5th edition campaign. I should say, I got that wrong. So you can sort of like see it in the artwork there, in the style of the thumbnail portraits, and essentially, even right down to essentially, there's interesting is sort of like long time fans of Call of Cthulhu will recognise that map. Essentially, it's taken from Masks of Nyarlathotep. Or certainly, if it's not, it's drawn very much in that same style. So the campaign essentially takes you from New York, and then down through the Panama Canal, Australia, Tasmania, and then south to the Antarctic ice shelf. So we've got a basically a quick map of the route there, and that's quite. It's an interesting. What I really like is just the interesting twisting of the map to show that route, to focus on the route rather than sort of like what you'd normally see in a. Or basically see that on a globe, which would be sort of more like basically like sort of like that, I suppose. But you see what I mean. So from New York, we basically you've got a bit of events in New York, departure, and sailing through. Basically, by chapter 5, you only got as far as being at sea, and then you're into the Panama Canal there. And I think one of the things about this is essentially as a campaign you're playing quite focused characters who are explorers and scientists, perhaps a journalist, that sort of thing, and then you will carry on right through, and you get onto the ice shelf and you start exploring, and strange things happen, because at the same time there's a rival German expedition, and there's also the sense of sort of like you find very similar discoveries that they find in the story at the Mountains of Madness. So the other thing is there's quite a lot going on in the terms of, so you've got essentially two parallel stories, one with the German expedition, one with the player characters there with, and you are constantly you're working with these strange things going on, attacks in the ice, discovery of strange bodies, and then you get further and further south, ultimately following in the footsteps of the expedition in the short story, and you will ascend to into the city itself, essentially by flight, where of course you will have strange encounters like that. So it takes you into the city of the Elder Things beyond, with the giant sightless, flightless penguins, of course, and their horrible fluting cries. And then it's back out. Really, to be honest, it's in some ways it's a campaign of discovery, but ultimately flight from what they discover. And as a campaign, it's quite linear, because essentially it's an expedition. You are going, you are going from A to B to C to D, and then back again. And you will, you'll make amazing discoveries, weird discoveries, and so on. but you're not really deviating very much from the campaign itself, or basically from its plot. But but that doesn't mean it's not a fantastic campaign, because it is fantastic, and it is, it's majestic. It has a grandeur that a lot of campaigns don't. Not every campaign has, but this one can genuinely have, because of the scale of the environment and what essentially what the player characters are attempting. Ultimately, we go on to the appendices, and there is essentially quite a large section of appendices there. And these really do. You've got a timeline of the original Miskatonic University expedition, basically a breakdown of the campaign timeline by chapter, because again, you have one of the limiting factors in the campaign is really the events happening day by day, month by month, because essentially you've not only got the other expedition making discoveries and progressing, but you've also got essentially the weather against the player characters as well, and the seasons. There's only a limited time that they can remain on the ice shelf. So Appendix 2 is a complete Antarctic manual. It's a guide to survival on the Antarctic ice shelf for this period. So there we go. Guide to clothing and oxygen equipment, tents and shelters and that kind of thing, and that dog sled travel, health and first aid diet and things like that, how to cope with injuries and so on, which you wouldn't normally expect to be dealing with in a campaign, but it's particular to this one because of the environment. We have a deep background which covers the Elder Things, the other expedition, which is the Bastmeyer Falcon expedition. We have another piece of fiction, which is the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym by Edgar Allan Poe, which appeared with, which was published together with At the Mountains of Madness as the Antarcticos cycle at the same time, because essentially when this originally came out, it was a big push by Chaosium back in sort of 1999, and you came out and it came with the book. There was also a screen pack, basically a resource and screen pack as well, and the fiction and a patch, Miskatonic University patch, which I have somewhere. Game logistics, essentially what they're carrying. I'm doing this too late in the day really to avoid the sound of the ice cream van. And then we've basically just got things like cargo operations and things like that, and fuel usage, game rosters, who the characters are, NPCs are, and all of the Starkweathermore expedition bio and stats, and these are quite lengthy. And you've got basically images of all here, the expedition album, all the cast. There, basically characters, quite a lot of characters to handle, but you're not dealing with them all at the same time. Crew rosters for the ship they can travel on, the film crew, basically, expedition bios for the German expedition as well, and then you've got stats for the vehicles, including both vessels. But it's the vessels which they travel on, or sail on, the expeditions to sail on. Then the aeroplanes they use, basically with the skis there, and essentially just a quick deck plan flight for them. Even including auto gyro. There we go. So yeah, quite a lot of information. And you've got a map of a deck plans for the Graf Zeppelin gondola, as the Germans basically have a gondola with them. Sorry, a Zeppelin with them. Then you've got all the handouts. You have numerous handouts. So like that's all the handouts. There's basically a start with a more Antarctic expedition character sheet there. And if you see that, it's in black and white there, but that patch there, Chaosium did that, made that available during basically when it was originally published in 1999. I've got new augmented skills, and then you've just got various other things in here. So essentially, okay, so quick guide to Antarctic clothing, map site, that sort of thing, and then plans of the various expedition camps. Just the final maps for the campaign, and almost last of all, you have start with the more expedition equipment manifest excerpts. One of the things here is that one of the things in the scenario that they do is there's a scene where the characters literally have to go into the bows of the ship, in the cargo holds of the ship they're travelling on, and check off everything. And it's managed to be both very immersive and very boring. It's role playing. It's role playing being a warehouseman. Basically let's just do a checklist and basically do a stock check. And then finally we've got a nice map of Antarctica, quite nice and simple. What may be interesting is what you are looking at is essentially it's a reprint. It's a very quite nice sturdy reprint, basically available for Chaosium now, of an older book, and it's I think obviously because it's been out of print since it was first published. I think it's been published once, I think, as a hardback before, for sort of like part of the one of the celebrations anniversaries, I believe, and then essentially people are asking for this one, but it's going to take some effort to adapt it to 7th edition. Essentially, in terms of the writing, that is. I mean, obviously, you could do it when on the fly as you're running it, and then really you've got to think about the redesign of how the campaign plays out, because essentially it's quite linear in its playthrough, and there may be some elements which may be unsuitable now or don't add anything to the campaign. Then it is due a revision. It'll be interesting to see what Chaosium come up when the time comes. In the meantime, they've got quite a lot that they're working on for Call of Cthulhu. But in the meantime, this is Beyond the Mountains of Madness, available as a new reprint. And if you do not have this, worth tracking down and taking a look at. I will review this in due course. I don't think I've ever reviewed it, but it's 20 years old, so it is probably worth a retrospective review at some point. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching another unboxing in the Nook. If you've enjoyed this, please do click the like button down below. If you've got any feedback or comments, then I do take the time to read those. And if you want to see me post more of these videos of essentially opening boxes, whittering about books, then please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with another unboxing in the Nook. Bye for now.